Back in the last chapter, 6, you worked with systems of equations. And this chapter, we're going to build off of that with linear programming, which is actually pretty cool because what we can do is come up with some constraints on, anything of a business, maybe, how much money they want to sell certain items for, and then figure out the best optimal solution. So what you're going to see in this chapter is when you first start out with these inequalities is looking at points that satisfy our inequality. Okay, so looking at the greater than or less than, and of course, as I mentioned in another video, checking test points. And so you might have just one constraint happening here, and remember the dotted line is it's not less than or equal than. And so you might find out, well, anything down here is the only thing that can be chosen, and then we try to figure out the optimal solution. And so you'll see in the first part is mainly just getting you used to how to graph these inequalities. And then when we get to where we have more than one, okay, then we start to look at, well, now we might care about only this area here as a feasible solution. So that's when you get into section 2 now, is we're going to look a lot at these graphical methods, and you're going to see various constraints, what these lines are, and then the points that actually close in this shaded region. Okay, so the shaded region here, as we call the feasible region, is those are the points that we would then plug in and see what gives us our maximum value or our minimum value. And that's what this talks about here. And you'll see me do that in the actual video where I plug points in and see what is the max and minimum value. And again, we're mainly going to look at the graphs of these because they can be very complicated to actually set these problems up and solve them. In 7.3, we're going to do the same thing, but now you're going to see the same type graphs, but now we're going to be looking at actual applications. So you're going to see, here's just an application example. You could read through it. The easiest thing typically to do is to set up a table. Okay, so where you can see in this case where I set up my table, and then this is going to give me my constraints, and once I get my constraints set up, then I will be able to look at a graph and look at the feasible solution. Okay, and so let me just show that. Here are what I want to minimize, and then my constraints, okay, based on the information here that they've given me. And then when I graph this, then I get a feasible region here, and now I look at these corner points. Okay, so those corner points are what I'm going to actually look at and plug these in. Okay, plug these into my objective function that I'm trying to minimize and see which one is the minimum. And as I mentioned, a lot of this we're going to do giving you this information, the graph, and you just having to plug values in, because as I said, these can be very complicated to actually solve without a graphing program. So you will see me in the videos, be sure and watch them, of how to graph these and then figure out how to find our either maximum if we want to maximize something or minimize our objective function.